discovery and related areas.
Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha, Senior Vice President of Brand Awareness at Reveal, and we are streaming live for the third day now from ILTA in Las Vegas, as you can tell from around us. My guest this morning, the first of two guests today, is Rachel Tausend, and I will let Rachel tell us who she is, where she is, what she does, and how she got there. Rachel.
Sounds good. Thank you, George. Thank you so much for inviting me to have this opportunity. As I was just saying, it's a first for me, I think, being live streamed professionally, and I think ever, unless something my niece or nephew did. Hopefully not. But also, of course, wearing a mask. So that fits. So I'm Rachel Tausend. Kudos on getting my last name correct. Rhymes with thousand. It's the easiest way to say it. My German colleagues have no trouble with it. So that's helpful.
Not. Yep.
I am a partner at K&L Gates in the eDiscovery Analysis and Technology Group, more commonly known as EDAT. I lateraled in there about 6 years ago so that I could move home to Seattle and have the opportunity to be practicing in one of the first, and I believe the first, formal e-discovery practice, practicing lawyers as well as technologists.
That's what I was going to ask, because I was pretty sure K&L Gates had one of the oldest.
I believe it is the first.
Okay.
It is the first. My partner, who is still there, Martha Dawson, was the first. She was actually a mentor of mine in law school. And in fact, prior to coming to K&L Gates, I was at a mid-sized firm where I was practicing litigator, investigator, government investigation, securities enforcement lawyer, and was setting up the e-discovery practice at that smaller firm and actually consulted with Martha about it. We were not competitors in any sense because the firms were so different clientele, that I consulted with her for setting it up. So that was kind of a...
So how did you get from that firm to what's now K&L Gates?
A very funny coincidence, or some would call it coincidence, which is that I was sitting, excuse my mask, sitting in Washington, D.C. with family in Washington State, and elderly parents wanting to figure out how could I keep my career, moving ahead, and also be closer to my family, help my family, and was trying to do it long distance before COVID, but not an easy thing to do. Running a practice group, I had built the e-discovery practice at my firm, was trying to run that and stay with my parents. Was sitting there thinking, how could I do this when I do government investigations and e-discovery? Well, the e-discovery practice was sitting in Seattle. Martha Dawson saying, we would really like somebody who has government investigations experience, who would want to be based in Seattle and bring in our first outside partner.
Perfect.
And fortunately, we had friends in common. So that is how that happened. So that worked out.
And Martha truly is a pioneer in this space.
Yes.
I mean, many people claim to be. She really is.
Yes, although she tends to prefer other words than pioneer.
Okay. Pioneer Square or something like that just doesn't ring right?
Right, yes. Or I think it's an age thing. But
okay.
Yes.
Understood.
But right, so they, and we were just talking, I think, yesterday about how things start to come full circle, right, in terms of inventing things and sort of just what e-discovery looks like. So when people a couple years ago started talking about artificial intelligence and all these things, we're like, actually, we've been using it in e-discovery. People just didn't call it.
Because K&L Gates really was the organization that gave birth to Atenex, right?
Correct. Yep. It was partners in Atenex and was the first law firm to spin off a sort of a subsidiary or a business angle. So yes, well ahead of its sort of ahead of the market. Now, when you see where the market's gone, it's exciting, and it's neat to continue to be a part of that. For my own story, and again, I'm sorry,
the masks pose challenges. We do what we can.
Sometimes they work, and sometimes they don't want to work.
Right.
I think I was saying, a lot of people say, oh, I fell into e-discovery. I would say I fell into litigation, and not fell exactly, but
it's not what you set out to do?
It is not what I set out to do. My father was a very well-known civil litigator, trial lawyer, which is awesome. I am my father's daughter, but I did not want to try to follow in that footsteps. I think I have other strengths. I always joke he's a better sort of oral advocate in the courtroom. I am much, much better at technology.
So what did you thought you were going to do before you ended up doing what you are doing?
More of a business track. I had been in the Peace Corps.
Where were you in the Peace Corps? I know we have to do a digression here. Where were you and when?
The Solomon Islands, Guadalcanal in the 90s.
Okay.
So a bit after college, worked for a bit, was going to do 2 years in the Peace Corps, ended up, had a whole plan, as much as, and I think this is really relevant to today, right? Because so many people had a plan and,
Yeah, and then life happens. Right.
And so for us, well, life happened, some personal things, family side things, and then we were planning to go to a Spanish-speaking country. I married right out of college. We planned to go to a Spanish-speaking country. My husband was a Latin American studies. We had a whole plan, and somehow instead we ended up in the Solomon Islands, which is a Melanesian culture.
Okay, very different from where you thought you would be.
Right, because in the in the rainforest, best unplanned thing that ever happened to us.
Burkina Faso, 1981 to 1983.
Oh, I did not know that. Brilliant. Okay, and our keynote speaker was a Peace Corps medical officer around that same time, I think. Yeah. So there's then you will be the one person who will understand digressing. But so when I went back so I came back, went to law school and business school. Right. Had a whole plan. And then, 2001 happened. So going into the business side of law, e-commerce particularly, wasn't very well timed.
Yeah.
The firm I was planning to go to said, hey, would you consider going into securities litigation and working on all these investigations and lawsuits that are coming out of the .com crash?
Yeah.
I said, sure. Okay.
Whatever.
Why not?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I did. And so really from the beginning, that was really the start, I think, in a lot of ways of e-discovery because of all the email traffic.
Yeah, that's when things amped up considerably, when those activities started to happen.
Right.
Yep.
And a lot of them, more senior lawyers were like, I don't know what this stuff is. I like my boxes of paper. You want to deal with this? Go right ahead.
Yeah, just get this headache away from me. I don't want anything to do with it.
So it's really neat now to be able to say, I actually have been doing e-discovery since I started practicing as a lawyer.
And were there people along the way who quietly took you aside and said, if you continue to do this is going to ruin your career. You will never be a partner at a major law firm?
I know that happened to my colleagues.
To me.
Yes, it happened to many people. I think for me, people knew that I was a little bit, maybe less of a traditional mold to begin with.
Right.
You don't have that many. I mean, I guess you're another example.
But there aren't many. Right.
And particularly ones like myself who've actually maintained a relationship with our village and our projects there and go back every few years prior to COVID, hopefully again. So I think that was a little bit of a different mix. But when I was applying or lateraling in, one of the questions I got asked by the then practice group chair, now co-chair of the US, was in one of my last interviews was, which is harder, the Peace Corps or e-discovery?
Well, that's an easy answer, I think. But you tell me.
Well, I wasn't sure if it was an honest, like a straight question or a joke.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm a really literal person, and I didn't want to treat it as a joke. And then, and so I thought I got to just roll with this. Not when I practiced, but you got to roll with this. So I just answered the similarities.
Okay.
And why I thought it wasn't about being harder or easier.
Right.
It was about why the Peace Corps prepares us quite well to do e-discovery. So that's how I answered, and he kind of looked at me and said,
a very politic response.
He was like, wow, I was not expecting that.
At least he asked.
Yeah, I know. I thought it was kind of great. So so that's kind of my path to where we are now.
So, and where you are now, what are the highlights of what you do? The things you enjoy most?
Yeah. Well, one, I enjoy being part of a group of partners and staff attorneys, so that each of us we work collectively and we each have our different strengths. And I think that's one of the things that we sort of learned throughout, right? Is that everybody has their highest and best use, what they most enjoy doing, what they're most comfortable doing. And when you're working in a group like that, you can each sort of have that piece. So my main piece, my background is investigations. I do plenty of litigation and other things. I also do corporate due diligence counseling. And I really like to make order out of chaos. find things, help solve problems, and I feel that the Peace Corps really prepared me for project management.
Yep.
Is a huge piece of things.
Very
right?
much so.
Speaking
Yep.
different languages,
Right.
understanding different cultural nuances.
Confronting the unexpected every day of your life and trying to figure out how to navigate that.
Yep. And helping take things from people who don't like it and maybe convince them that it's not as bad as they think.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that there's opportunities there. That it's not just all pain.
Right. Yeah, there is gain, not just pain.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So those are the
As you think about what you deal with in e-discovery, what are the one, two, or three biggest, depending upon how you look at it, challenges or opportunities in the coming 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, that's a funny question, because is it specific to e-discovery? Is it everything?
Well, it's
right?
specific to e-discovery, but reinterpret it any way you want.
Right,
Yeah.
but can it be right now, right? Like
Yeah.
specific, and I feel like if we want anything, one is, obviously the sort of cliche answer, but true one is, well, what's important to our clients? Because at the end of the day, I'm in a client-focused business, and in a law firm where, right, I consider myself, I have multiple different clients. Right, because I have my internal clients, which are really my partners. Sometimes the associates and paralegals, secretaries, assistants are my clients.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And then obviously we have our outside clients. So many different things. So it's sort of staying in tune to what matters to them. And are we focused on business and sort of the core of e-discovery, or we need to be focused on, as we have been, sort of more basic needs and life events. And I think there again, living overseas, and you probably experience this too, understanding sometimes it's important not to start with just 50 gigs of data. Do this. How are you?
Right.
What's going on for you? Take a moment. But then also at the same time, being like, and I think in ILTA is a great example. ILTACon is a great example of this. Is our first phase of, okay, we're going to shut down, we're going to get safe, we're going to get through this disease, and then we're just going to go back to normal.
Right.
Okay, and then it was like, okay, that's not going to happen, but we're going to shut down, we're going to get rid of the disease, and then we're going to go back to the new normal, which is going to be, we have these new data sources, we have more people who want to work from home, but no disease.
Yeah, and turns out that's not going to happen either.
And that is not going to happen either.
Yeah.
So now I feel like we're in this third wave. Okay, we're gonna live with this disease as safely as possible.
Yep.
And figure out how we do things, like come to conferences and wear a mask while we're speaking.
Right.
And follow guidance from
Yep.
professionals, just like I want people, right? Like if we're the e-discovery professionals, then let us tell you what to do for e-discovery.
Yep.
And similarly, someone else needs to tell me what to do to stay safe in the pandemic.
Yep. So let's close with one final question. This is my ideal e-discovery platform question.
Yes.
And the parameters are, there are no parameters. Assume anything could be possible. Assume no technological limitations, no financial constraints. Suspend the laws of physics if you would like. Whatever. What would your ideal e-discovery platform look like?
I still want an exciting answer, like really out of the box answer. And I mean, one thing that's interesting about that is so much of it is already here, which is kind of amazing.
Which is a huge change from not that long ago.
Yes. Yes, and I'm seeing it actually, interestingly, working in the corporate due diligence space and helping people get through massive amounts of data. The sort of how that moves, right? So like the platforms for that are not as sophisticated, or they're very sophisticated, but in terms of sort of the review batching, that type of thing, that sort of how do you put a workflow in for a large team of people to look at this data? I feel like they're just, it hasn't been around as long.
Right, it's a new idea to them.
It's a new idea, and it's neat to be able to add value there that really feel like, oh, that was so brilliant. It's like, well, really, it was just a really basic.
We got that one nailed.
e-discovery concept, but I'll take the. I'm happy with that. So I think part of it is hoping a platform that helps people, like as I was saying, understand it, like it, not dread it. I think that to me, and I'm not sure I can say what that is because I already think it's great. And I think also the second piece is that, the increasing ability translate multiple cultures, understand with AI the nuances of, what is an angry expression in one country might not be in another, or vice versa.
Yep.
I know I learned a while years ago about red ink. Like I was taught fairly early in my career, never use red ink in communicating with people in certain countries because that
it doesn't go over so well.
It means something different than I might think it means.
You circle back then to your Peace Corps experience with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what I'm really interested in hearing is how other people, probably another time since I'm sure we're out of time, but
and we are at time, but yes.
Excellent.
Yep.
I'll stop.
So what I probably should be doing is going back and putting together a summary of all the different responses I've gotten, and then we can have another discussion about that.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be wonderful.
Well, Rachel, thank you very much for joining us. Rachel Tausend is a partner at K&L Gates. I am George Socha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live. Thanks for joining us, and please join us again today at 3:45 Pacific. Thank you.